started thinking about this and I said, well, what makes a great hip hop feature? And
Ooh.
so in my mind, a lot of it has to do with sometimes it's a surprise of somebody you didn't think that was going to ride this beat in a certain way or do in a certain way. Obviously, the lyrical performance matters, but I always look at it when I really think of these great hip hop features when I was writing it down. I think about it that I remember the feature so much on the song that I forget the person whose song it is, right? Like that's kind of a really great indicator to me of how great a hip hop feature is. What's for you? What makes a great hip hop feature?
I think I agree with you, but I would also say that my favorite hip hop features that I notice are the coming out party ones, right?
Ah,
So when you first hear, or like that first year that Kendrick Lamar's coming out, and you hear him on like The City with The Game. Before he's like really Kendrick Lamar, he had just made Section 80. I don't even think Good Kid, Mad City was out yet.
nope, it
And then
wasn't.
it's like, I love the Who Is This Dude features, like AZ on Life's a Bitch, which we're gonna get to, I'm sure.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of those that I really like. I think J. Cole has probably won on the Jay-Z song. Maybe A Star Is Born.
So,
Not that that's not to
no,
me. It's like,
that was kind of his coming out though. His big
yeah,
coming out. Yeah.
like that's not an all-time great feature. It's not even an all-time great J. Cole feature, which we're probably gonna get to.
Yes,
But
I got some from
like
him.
that one, the Big L on the Yes You May remix from like the early 1990s, and I'm trying to think of some others. But Band for
Nas live at the barbecue.
Big Pun off the books with the Beat Nuts, and then he was on Band for TV, which is where like Nature. We had heard Nature before, and he had did some. He had did the Firm album, but that was
Mm-hmm.
him on his own and sort of branching out, and he had a memorable verse there. So I kind of like the coming out party verse where who is it the first time you hear somebody. I think Tupac even had one with Digital Underground. I feel like every great artist has one that you could trace it back to, and obviously Nas with Live at the Barbecue, that's probably the one that people think about the most. Well, real hip
Most.
hop heads think about the most.
Yeah, I know. I think you make a great point in terms of the coming out parties, and that's what's really memorable for a lot of people in terms of features. It's really sometimes the first time you hear somebody, and I feel
Yeah.
like there's another kind of feature where sometimes now you'll see some of the vets hop on a young artist who they really like, and it's kind of the vet feature is almost like a showcase of their skill still, but also championing this new dude or girl coming along who can really spit that they really like. Like when Jay hopped on the Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe remix, which is a really great Jay feature, but like is an amazing Kendrick song.
Yeah, and another one, and I guess we could just start like getting into some of these verses then, because
Yeah.
we're already breaking it down. One of those examples for me that you just mentioned, Cool G Rap, the realist, where he was
Yeah.
the vet, he was in for a long time. Mobb Deep wasn't new; they were already a few albums in at this point. They were Mobb Deep, but at the same time, they were still like youngish in the game. You know what I mean? They weren't like Mobb Deep. We know them now as legendary. They were still very much at their peak at that point. And Cool G Rap came in. I think it was the first verse of the song too. And I remember the first time, and this is another thing too, is you remember some of the places you were when you hear these songs. I just remember hearing it at home one day. I think I saw like maybe there was a music video or something like that for the song. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
exactly, but I just remember hearing it at home. And I think that was the first time I heard of Cool G Rap. I was like 9 years old or whatever. I didn't know about like Fast Life and all the stuff with DJ Polo or Polo from like earlier back in the day. So
Yeah.
that like as a young dude, I was like, oh wait, who's this? And then obviously you do your research, so you get to learn about people in that way as well.
Yeah. Nah, no doubt about that. But like, I want to start it back with what you said about the introduction of rappers. 'Cause I think you made some good ones, and you mentioned the one that I think for us as Nas fans and for a lot of older hip hop heads, you know, I have to think about this too because Live at the Barbecue that I'm about to mention, that's not my introduction to Nas, but for other people who might be a little bit older for me, that were really into hip hop, my introduction to Nas was really Ain't Hard to Tell. That was kind of my introduction to Nas, and I went back and heard Halftime and other stuff. But and just got into Illmatic. But for people who heard Live at the Barbecue, and I understand, because you have to take yourself back to what hip hop was at that time, 92, 93, and
Yeah.
him hopping on this Large Professor track and getting on live at the Barbecue, and you hear his verse, and you're like, yo,
And it's the
This
first verse in the
first
song,
verse
which
on the song,
matters.
yes,
Yeah.
and he just comes out kicking it, and you're like, who is this dude? This dude is. You can see why people at the time were so hyped for Illmatic, because this dude was rapping on some next stuff that flowing like nobody else was. He was raw, he was aggressive, and it's like it's a memorable hip hop moment. And I see why, even though I didn't experience that moment the way other people did, I can see why going back and looking like that's a memorable hip hop moment for sure.
Yeah, and I think we could circle this back to like Kendrick Lamar of now, because that's somebody who you and I were both old enough to experience in real time. Where I think my introduction to Kendrick Lamar on a bigger feature, because I think the first thing I actually heard from him was probably Cartoons and Cereal, or
Mm,
maybe one of the Absol joints that he did. Oh no! Actually, the first thing I heard from him was Hood Gon' Love It. That was a feature. He was on the J
J
Rock
Rock
song.
song,
Remember J Rock? People forget that J Rock was the first one for Black
MTV.
Hippie to really emerge, and his album took a long time to come out. This whole thing, but he was dropping songs in like '08, '09. I had heard of J Rock, and I heard Kendrick Lamar on Hood Gon' Love It, and he was rapping all fast, and like I can't even repeat the verse. It became the theme song for Grand Theft Auto years later, but by that time, Good Kid, Mad City had already come out. Kendrick Lamar became a star, and then we know what happened with Pimp Butterfly. But the introduction, I think it's so important because it really, to your point, it brings people that excitement. It sets the tone for some people, and for a lot of guys, like it'll pay off for them, and some others not so much. I mean, we could probably get into that too, because Cannabis is somebody who excited a lot of people. Where he had the verse on Desperados, he had the verse
Yep.
on what's the Lost Boys joint, Beast from the East, where
Beast.
he went crazy. He was on 4 3 2 1, which
4321, one of the great
that was the
posse
big
cuts of
one.
all time, right?
Yeah, and then it didn't really work out that way. I know Sci the Prince, he's dropped a couple good projects, but I kind of expected more after So Appalled, which was my introduction to him. And there's something to be said for like the great features where they'll set the stage for you. You know what I mean? Like Nas, for example, he just came right out the gate. He went first on the song, so that mattered. With Kendrick Lamar in the city with the game, they dropped the beat for him. With like they took off the beat entirely. And with Sci the Prince and So Appalled, they kind of faded it a little bit, took off the drums. He went in for 4 bars. Like
Mm-hmm.
that lets you know that the producer or whoever's behind the record is like, no, we want you to focus on this dude. Even though Jay-Z and Kanye and all these other big artists are on this song, we want you to focus on this dude. And I think that also, like, the production obviously matters in anything.
Nah, it really does in terms of creating that moment. It's funny, as we're talking, more are coming to me, and I'm adding it to my list because I'm like, oh, how did I forget this?